Well, you may have noticed a new sponsor around the forums. It's an innovative new property sales management service, Movewise, and joining me to give us all the inside information on this service is James Donohue. James, lovely to catch up with you. You've been on Property Tribes now for a few weeks, but I think it's so important to launch our sponsors to the Property Tribes community and give them a real understanding of the service that you're offering. So I think a good place to start is, what exactly is Movewise and how is it different to a high street estate agent?
Well, firstly, obviously, thanks for having me, and yeah, really good to be part of the Property Tribes community. From certainly Movewises' perspective, and how do we differ ourselves from, say, your traditional agents in the UK market? I suppose, firstly, if you see Movewise more as that property sales management service, or perhaps even a property sales broker, that's what differs ourselves from, say, a traditional one agent route effectively. Now, traditionally, lots of sellers, whether it is residential or you are a landlord looking to sell a tenanted property, traditionally most sellers will go to the high street agent, even an online agent as such. The challenge that we have seen with that approach, certainly over the last few years that Movewise have been in place, is effectively, it does provide a very close sales strategy, by going effectively through a one marketing agent. And through our own research and even personal experience of selling property ourselves within the business, what we found was perhaps having more flexibility and more accountability in that sales process provides a better sales outcome. So that's why we try to provide greater flexibility in our sales approach by almost having a multi-agent route. So that's where perhaps you might be able to position the property or even a portfolio with multiple agents simultaneously. And you're not effectively wedded to any of those agents. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, and what we have recently, and perhaps we'll get onto later, is we've launched more direct to investor sales channels as well. And that's collaborating with other property networks within the industry. So we're very keen on collaborating with others, but also working with the NLA directly in terms of selling directly to other investors within the NLA community. And you can imagine having that national coverage as well as the local knowledge of agents still on your side. It just gives sellers, landlords a great opportunity to get good insight, good marketing, and hopefully good valuation for their property.
Well, I think it's so important that you do specialise in selling tenanted and buy-to-let properties. And from my own experience, when I've gone to sell a buy-to-let property and I've gone to the agent, they always say, well, you really need vacant possession. And to my mind, I think there are a lot of benefits of selling a property with a tenant in situ, and you're very keen for that to happen as well, aren't you?
Absolutely. One of the key focuses is very much about effectively keeping the PRS growing, and ensuring that all parties concerned have the best possible outcome. And that's from the existing landlord who's selling their property to potentially the new investor or new landlord who will be taking on that property going forward, but also the tenant as well. Keeping that tenant within their home is certainly something that we focus and try to support. We can't always guarantee in every instance, naturally, but it is very much trying to provide a good overall sales outcome. Mm-hmm. And there's naturally through our partnership with the NRLA, that's been a real key factor for them, really, because the last thing we really want to see, as we're already seeing currently, is lots of landlords potentially either rationalising their portfolio, exiting completely, and naturally that's going to have an impact on the PRS and have an impact on the personal lives of people who reside in the properties. So what we do certainly is try and promote and engage and try and get that direct to investor route effectively, so it ensures all parties concerned have a good outcome. Can't always provide guarantees, as I say, but certainly that's what our sales solution does support.
Well, I mean, I think it's wonderful because for the outgoing landlord, they can receive rent up to the day of completion. For the incoming landlord, they can receive rent from day one of completion. They can check the payment history of the tenant. They can see how the tenant's been looking after the property. And of course, the tenant, they can stay in their home, and it can basically, the tenancy can see relatively seamlessly from a legal perspective from the old landlord to the new landlord. So it's not just a win-win situation, it's a win-win-win or triple win situation, which is why I'm such a big fan of it. And some landlords think that if you sell a tenanted property, it may take longer, or you might not achieve such a high price if it was vacant possession. But that's not strictly the case, is it?
No, it isn't actually, because there is certainly advantages for purchasing tenanted property. I think you just touched on a few examples there where, especially if you're not from that local area, and perhaps that's an area where you've been wanting to invest, having a tenanted property or even tenanted portfolio that you're happy to take going forward, that has its advantages. You don't have to source new tenants, and all the legal ASTs, etc., are already in place. Gas certificates, electrical certificates, it's already in place as part of that initial conveyancing as it transfers from one investor to the next. So that really does have some real advantages going forward for any prospective investor who wants to take on that tenanted property. And you also have to look at the valuation, especially if it's in a good, strong area where it has good fundamentals, good local amenities. Those areas where there is still potentially growth within the local market, it's good regeneration. Having that tenanted property can be advantage to any prospective seller, because that can increase the value. Again, I will be transparent. It doesn't guarantee in every instance, because something that we always, when we engage landlords on a daily basis, is we always advise that naturally, as investment property, as everybody, and even myself as an investor, you do look at the yield, what can be achieved on that as an asset. And, we always advise that in order to really try and drive a good, meaningful, strong valuation, you need to ensure that the existing rent is within market value, because naturally, any prospective investor will be looking at that as a point, obviously taking into consideration other points, again, where the property is situated, and naturally, obviously, what the condition of property is.
Absolutely. I think, we've talked about the advantages of keeping tenants in place, and for the transaction to occur between landlords. And I think let's talk about some of the other key benefits of actually using the Movewise service, because you appoint a property sales manager to oversee the transaction. So the landlord selling has one person as a point of contact throughout the process. And I think that can help take away quite a bit of the stress and the worry, particularly, as you say, if the property is not close to where the landlord is living. You've got somebody basically managing the sale for you, haven't you?
Exactly that. It's, as you just touched on there, Movewise is very much about providing that consistency. So you, at the point of instruction, whether that's one property or multiple properties, that will be then provided to effectively a property sales consultant or negotiator on our side, who will effectively then manage that and will be the point of contact for the strategy, providing feedback, how things are progressing, what do we potentially need to change to potentially get to that result. Because nothing's ever guaranteed, property especially. We do always provide a sales proposal in advance, so we all effectively are agreeable in terms of what the initial approach would be. But it's, as you say, that consistent point of contact beyond, which then will guide the landlord seller effectively through that process. And the feedback on that is really positive.
Awesome. And you mentioned strategy there. We've touched on it earlier. There are three main routes to sale via Movewise. That is via local high street agent. You have loads of data points to work out which is the best performing agent in the area, which is so important when you're choosing which agent to work with. You have the investor networks route to sale, and you also have the auction route to sale as well. And I'm assuming that the property sales consultant basically looks at the property and talks about what you're hoping to achieve, and basically comes up with a good solid strategy of how to sell that property at the best possible price in I guess the quickest time. Absolutely,
yeah. Every property is different, and depending on what area, to have just one specific approach, I think can certainly hamper and provide challenges when selling property, especially again as market conditions change so much as we're experiencing right now. So the role of the property sales consultant who works with the landlord seller is to navigate that and provide that insight and that guidance. It's very much up to, obviously, our client is effectively, they are the decision maker. Ultimately they're the property owner, so it's up to them in respect to the final decision. But we're here to try and guide them and navigate that process. And and this does go back to the initial agent approach as well, which we do simultaneously with the direct to investor. There are some really good agents out there. Got great local knowledge. They've been there for many years, if not decades, and that's very much what Movewise wants to try and tap in into behalf of landlords and sellers in general, and collaborate and try and work with that experience that local agents have. But the key is that not every agent is always going to perform, and the challenge that lots of sellers have, then they potentially have to reflect and maybe reduce the value because perhaps they've just run out of interest in their marketing, or they have to exit and then have to go through the process again. Key is with Movewise, we're already doing that. You already signed one set of T's and C's, you've got a consistent point, and we're already thinking about those next strategies, those next moves going forward. So it's very much about just trying to keep that momentum going, where we can leverage and work with good local agents. But as I say, we've also got this strong growing marketplace of other property networks, as well as the NRLA marketplace, which we leverage.
Well, it's awesome that you're working with the NRLA, because obviously Property Tribes is a partner as well, and it really does create a nice virtuous circle there, that we're all working together, and we're all on the same page with how best to sell a rental property. So how much does Movewise cost for landlords to get their property on board with? Is it comparable to a local high street agent?
I would say yes. Ultimately, we're certainly all about providing value, and we're and that's what's key for us. We want to ensure that the solution is something which is going to provide the outcome that prospective sellers want to have and obviously experience throughout. I would certainly say we are middle range in terms of kind of fees, etc. We're very open and transparent. So if you go for our website or directly through the NRLA, we have our fees very much there. Generally, we are, and I would just, this is obviously a plug on behalf of NRLA, but if you are an NRLA member, you do qualify for a discounted rate. So that's usually in Greater London is 1.6% plus VAT. If it's outside the Greater London area, it's 1.4% plus VAT effectively. So you get that discounted rate compared to the usual 1.7, 1.5% effectively. And effectively, that's all encompassing, and that's agreed from the outset. So, whether it's sold directly or through another property network, or collaborator that we work with, or direct to agent, that's very much all encompassing. So, there's a lot of value that's extracted from that. And let's say we're very open and transparent. We have also an onboarding fee with Movewise, which is an initial £500 plus VAT. But essentially that then covers that initial onboarding process, which is then deducted from the end completion fee. So traditionally, as you would pay an estate agent effectively, and that's only a one-off fee, whether you're selling one or multiple properties effectively. We agree all that in the proposal from the outset, just to make sure that everybody's happy with that.
And can you help with problem properties, like maybe a property with a short lease or a property that's unmortgageable for another reason? Can you also help with those?
So there's no guarantees, as such. We've got a very experienced team. So head of property is Kirsty Burnham. She's ex Douglas and Gordon for many years, and she's got a very good, strong, experienced team. And as with the initial property sales team as well. Look, I think I've touched on a couple of times. There is always challenges that come up with property. Depending what property type is. Short leases. Etc. Structural issues really, and naturally that's what we try and understand from the outset. How do we try and overcome those? We have solutions. We also have affiliated partners that perhaps can provide more specialist advice. We're not going to provide advise every scenario. We can provide strict guidance, but naturally our our role is to certainly support and provide that guidance, very much as perhaps you might go to an NLA, advisor. You may ask questions and they may not have the direct answer themselves, but naturally they built a community, and I'm sure with property tribes as well, where you can outsource and you can discuss with other specialists in that sector, and that's what we always will try and do. I suppose the key point for us is providing honesty, transparency, and certainly helping them through that, especially if there is that challenge with the property, whether it's structural or something like that.
And you're a landlord yourself as well, so you understand the challenges that landlords are facing.
Well, yes, absolutely. It's hard to get away from it, the media in the moment, isn't it? It seems as though it's a daily news feed at the moment. But yes, it's personally experienced the challenges. I think when we recently did a roundtable a couple of weeks ago, again with the NLA and some really good thought leaders within that. One of the points that I did raise is I think as you've got to in this sector, but many sectors, is you have to be able to adapt, and there is a lot of doom and gloom out there at the moment, and sometimes I do feel as though sometimes you need to take a step back and reflect and draw on other people in the industry or in the sector who can provide that guidance to obviously try and adapt to these new environments, whether that's you're impacted by the increase in interest rates, which naturally we all have, I certainly have, but you've got to factor those changes in. Same way if you have challenges with your property, whether it's structural or there's some kind of a renovation that's required, or with the existing tenant as well. You really have to try and just draw in on good, sound, experienced advice from the community, and that's why I always advise, and certainly what I do currently. Because it's never straightforward if you're doing your own.
Well, absolutely spot on there. You're definitely singing from the same hymn sheet as I do. It's great to have Movewise as part of the Property Tribes community. Thank you for joining me, James. And if anybody would like to know more about Movewise, we will put the link on there for you below the video. And James will be on hand also to answer any questions you may have. But I have to say, James, I think it's a very exciting and innovative service, and it's really going to add a lot of value to the landlord community, and it's coming at a very, the timing is excellent, because I think there are landlords out there that definitely need Movewise. So thanks for joining me, and we hope to catch you again very soon, and hope you'll be a regular contributor to Property Tribes.
Great, thanks for having me, and looking forward to it certainly. And to Wells, the lights have just switched off, so there you go. It's always good time, isn't it? Nice natural end there. Exactly, and thank you very much.
Good speaking to you. Thank you, James.
Bye.